Hi everybody, it's Peter, and this is my YouTube channel, Oh For Pete's Sake Stitch, where I talk about what I've been doing for my cross stitch. It's been 4 weeks, but I still have quite a bit to show you. To those of you who are new, I hope you like what I see, what I'm going to show you. And if you're returning, thanks for coming back. And as always, thanks for all the comments and the questions that you have for me. It's always great to talk to everybody. So um, thanks, everybody. What's great about this video is that I get to share two finishes with you, and they're pretty big. So on the last video, I told you that I was doing a rotation that included one project that I would work on for 5 days, and then a second project that I would work on for 2 days. And my 5 day project was the Ginny Bean Garden, the green bean sampler. And this is currently a stitch along that Sassy Jacks is doing for her birthday, and they just started on August 1st. But if you want to see what lots of other folks are doing on this, go check out her station and her Flosstube and her Instagram feed. But yeah, so this model is stitched on colonial green, and what I stitched on for my finish was Seraphim Fabrics Time Goes By 40 Count. And so that's my first big finish for the month. Something that I've come to realize is that when I try to take pictures of my finishes for Instagram, I have the absolute worst lighting in my house. Because as you can see here, it's got a green tinge. But everywhere I took it in my house, I would take it someplace and it had too much yellow light, and it would appear more brown than what it is. And where I ended up taking light had a lot of daylight, which gave it the appearance of having more blue. But it is more green. And if I lift it up and show it with my board, so the fabric as time goes by, and then my backboard is covered with Zweigart light mocha, so you can see the green tinge when it's up against some tan. So it's still green fabric like the model, but not as dark. I used all of the recommended overdyed cotton floss. I did have to change one or two just because my fabric is a little bit lighter, and so I did have to change some of the lighter greens so that way they would show up. Now, something else that I did change is in the model. You can see that she has a capitalized alphabet, and then the 23rd Psalm followed by her name. And then you can also almost see, like at the ends of the shorter lines, they've got some borders. And so on my piece, I reformatted it so that way I've got some family names, Emma, James, Abraham, and Louise, for that space where the capital letters were. And then I changed it. I've got other pieces that have the 23rd Psalm, and so I decided that I wanted to try a different verse. And so this is a children's nursery rhyme that gets sung along to the I'm a Little Teapot. And so I'm not going to sing it for you. I'm going to save you that embarrassment from myself. But it's I'll plant a little seed in the dark, dark ground. Out comes the yellow sun, big and round. Down comes the cool rain soft and slow, up comes the little seed, grow, grow, grow. And some of those letters do get a little ghosty just because my Weeks Dye Works olive was turning a little too yellow, but I think it gives it that antique look. And you can see that I took some of the borders that were in the model, and I used it for the end of the verses. And the other change that I did is that some of these green beans across the bottom were stitched in Weeks Dye Works putty. And I wanted my green beans to be green because this outside border is all stitched in putty. And so you can see that it's got that tan appearance. And so I changed some of them just to some of the other greens that are in the pattern. So that was green bean sampler. And so that's the first finish that I've got to show you this month. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. Oh, the other thing that I did wrong. So these flowers here are ragdoll, and the stamens are supposed to be just backstitch. And I made the mistake of just doing long stitches for the filaments and the anthers. So it still the same effect, but just a little bit different. So that's green bean sampler. My second finish this month was my 2 days a week project, so my project B, and it was Artful Offerings Songbird samplers. And so you can see that the cover art has a white background and it's pretty bold. But what I used was the country sampler conversion. Now they usually send it with a different fabric than what I used, but they still use a tan fabric. And this is a Songbird Sampler by Artful Offerings. I chose to change the fabric to Fox and Rabbit, a baked clay 46 count, using the still using the country samplers overdyed cotton conversion. And so you'd have to call them for that conversion. This was a lot of fun to stitch. It's really hard to see in the alphabet, but in the alphabet I changed the my initials, so PJD to the dark blue. So the rest of the alphabet is in the charted black onyx by Weeks Dye Works. The one thing that I'm a little disappointed in is when I bought my kit, I didn't like the red of the cardinal, so I changed that on my own, and theirs had more contrast, and I really should have just trusted Jeannie and the folks at Country Sampler. So that's my mistake, but the cardinal still looks great. I love the Art Deco type feel of this pattern. So I haven't quite figured out yet how I'm going to finish this. The model that is at their shop is a pillow, and I did buy a fabric for a backing of a pillow. But then I started to look at this, and it's about 12, 13 inches wide, and I have very few samplers on my wall that are this size. Everything I have is pretty big. So I'm briefly thinking about framing it so that way I have a different size on my wall, but a pillow would be a lot easier and a lot cheaper for me to do. So I'll see what happens. Yeah, so that's Songbird Sampler. On the last video back in June, I told you that if I finished two large samplers or two large pieces from my whips, I would, or works in progress list, I would be able to treat myself to a new start. and I gave you two options. The first one was Cathcart Calquin, again by Shakespeare's Peddler, but it had a lot of alphabets, and I just wasn't in the mood for an alphabet. So what I ended up choosing was the Remember Me by Teresa Kogut. And so that's why, well, let me show you this first. So this is the Remember Me. And the first thing you will say is, well, Peter, it's got an alphabet and that's not what you wanted. And well, I always start up here in the upper left-hand corner. So I've got a while to get to the alphabet, but I've also reformatted this so that way it doesn't have an alphabet, but rather has a family name and where they grew up. So I won't have an alphabet. But yeah, there we are. So here is my start of Teresa Kogut's Remember Me. And so I'm my back is against my sampler wall. And so you can see this is a shifted where I'm taping or recording, so that way you can see my Teresa Kogut's Let Love Rain. And so this is on one wall, and directly behind my camera is my stitching chair, and so I get to look at Let Love Rain all the time. And so I've been working on this Remember Me, and all I can keep thinking is that is going to be really awesome side by side, just because Teresa is just a master at colors. And so I really did think that this piece was going to have like 5 different pinks and reds, but it's all just 2 DMC and Classic Colored Works used brick. And then she's just got a lot of neutral colors to just really accent those reds. So, and it's the same thing as with Let Love Rain. You know, what I loved about that was all of the yellows and the blue, but yet there's only one blue and like 2 yellows. And it's just all of those neutrals and greens that make those accent colors pop. And yeah, so this is the first page of the pattern, and it's 9 pages long. And so me, just being the weirdo that I am, I like to finish pages, going page by page. And so this flower only had like 3 stitches on page 1, but I also like to finish motifs. And so I just kept going on this large, I'm going to call it a dahlia, just because it's got the pointed leaves, but it's probably, I mean, it's more typical for carnations, and it could be a carnation, but I'm calling it a dahlia, a white dahlia. And so I finished that all the way across. Now, when I started this, I thought I had all of my colors figured out, and that I had it properly kitted, except for I was missing this light green. So I had the dark green, but not the light green. And so the light green goes on the other sides of this flower and finishes this leaf, and the calyx of the leaf gets filled in with that light green. So I'll have a true finish when I put in that light green. One thing that I will say about the light green, this is all DMC except for used brick by Classic Color Works and Celadon, Celadon by Weeks Dye Works. And in her pattern, she gives a DMC counterpart. And so in her pattern, she says that the Celadon is similar to 3052. And so I'm like, well, what I'll do is I'll just go online. I'll find other 3052s in other brands. And when I started to look, I saw that a lot of the online stores are now saying that Celadon is 3012. And so this past weekend was the grand opening for the Common Thread Cross Stitch down in Ocala, Florida. And so I took the 3052, which is the DMC that she had selected, and compared it to the greens that were there. And so instead of the Celadon, I am using Scaparnog by Weeks Dye Works, which is more of the green color that she probably used in her models. So when you compare the greens, they're going to look great side by side. So that's just something that I would. Overdyed cottons change more regularly than DMC, so I always like to double check the overdyed to DMC. So I'm going to be really happy to get that Scaparnog in my pattern. Yeah, so that's finally starting Remember Me. It was supposed to be my sampler September start in 2025, and I decided to do green bean sampler. And then it was supposed to be my New Year, New Start, but I decided to continue with, I forget now, Ann Morrison from Hands Across the Sea. I was borrowing that chart and I needed to get it done. So I didn't start it in New Year's, but I finally have Remember Me started. And I'm really excited to get it finished and hanging right beside Let Love Ring. So yeah, so I'm excited. I've been working on a rotation, like I said at the beginning, of a 2-day project and a 5-day project. And sometimes that can be a 3-4, but working on 2 projects in 1 week was working really well. So, of course, when I started Remember Me, I'm like, okay, this is something new and exciting, and so I'm like, well, I don't need a rotation project. And I went to the grand opening and I saw a pattern called Gathering Bright Blooms. And I've had my eye on this since it came out to market this year, and it is very different from me. It's just, it's very bright. It's on a very dark blue fabric, so it's just very different. But I've really loved just the graphic nature of it. And I saw it at the grand opening, and they had some surprise savings. So just random patterns in the shop had a little just a little sheet of slip of paper, a little slip of paper that said, congratulations, this pattern is a certain percentage off on sale. And so I picked it up like I do most of the time when I go to the shop, and it just had that little sheet of paper, and I'm like, all right, that's a heavenly body telling me that I need to purchase this pattern. And then of course I also had to kit it up, and so this is and because I've been working on Remember Me for so long, it's like, well, I want a new start. And so I should have been staying with my rotation, 5-2 rotation, because then maybe I wouldn't have started this. I bought this at the grand opening on Saturday, and so this is about 3 days of stitching. I am stitching, so the recommended is a navy Ada using Cosmo threads, but Robin Pickens provides a DMC conversion. So I'm using the DMC, and I'm stitching it on 32 count, or sorry, Picture This Plus Mystic 32 count. So it's a lot larger stitches than I usually do, and I'm doing it 2/2, so that's a little bit more complicated than normal, but it works and it looks really cool. So you can see that the cover art has it as 3 tiers, so that way you can frame it. I've always thought that this would be a really cool drum. And so I have picked my 5 most favorite motifs, and I'm going to stitch them in a single row. Now I was stitching, I just said 5, and so I finished this blue flower, and I'm like, I'm rolling it up, and it's like, I may want a little bit bigger drum. So I'm going to be adding a 6th motif to the end. Now, one of the problems, and this is just me being not thinking it through and excited about a second start this week, and I didn't count correctly. So I started with these 2, we're going to call them ranunculus because they're rounded leaves and they're orange. So I started with these, and I based all of my borders, and I'm using the same border pattern that she did, where it's leaves and then solid blue. So I based all of my border spacing on these ranunculus. And then I get to the tulip, and I start from this corner, so that way I can go down. And I get to the leaves, and there's something wrong because I'm 1 stitch too low compared to the ranunculus. And so I counted the stitches on the tulip, and it's actually 1 stitch taller than the first motif. And I'm like, oh shoot. And so I decided that what I needed to do was go back and count, and of course all of the other motifs are anywhere from 1 to 3 stitch taller than the first motif that I used for all of my border spacing. So I think instead of always going with the border, I have decided that I'm going to do all of the motifs and sort of figure out how can I space it properly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise this blue border goes across the top here, and I'm going to raise it 2 stitches up, and so it's going to be a little bit more even with the top of the leaves rather than the middle, but it's going to be 3 stitches from the top of the flowers, so it's still going to be an even spacing around all of the between the border and the flowers is all going to be 3 stitches. It's just the border is going to be not centered, and that's fine because at least the outside of the border is going to be a little bit more level. So that was my impulse start, causing a little bit more of a headache than I anticipated, but it's also just me overthinking border spacings, which is probably more true than any part of it. So this is going to be finished soon. So, but it's going to be a really cool drum. I've been trying to find some fabric that I can put on the top, and what I may do is maybe cut this a little bit closer, so that way maybe I have enough fabric here on the bottom, and then I can just use the linen for the top. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But yeah, so that's gathering bright blooms. So something different for me. All right, so those are my finishes, my works in progresses, and now I'm going to show you some just some really quick plans. I have learned that I love the rotation of 2 projects a week, and I will be finishing the Robin Pickens piece very soon. So I'm going to be working on Remember Me as my 5-day project. And then my 2-day project is going to be my oldest whip, which is the Scarlet House's Sarah Redfern. And I have really loved this pattern since Brenda and Laura, the Serious Starter, did their Scarlet House showcase years and years ago. But this one always ends up at the bottom of my whip drawer, and I always forget about it. Partly because I'm not enjoying some of the colors. So I'm showing this to you just because you are going to see some progress before next year, or before next month. And so this is my start, and I am stitching this on XJU Designs Little Bunny, 46 count Little Bunny. And so all of this vine for the honeysuckle is stitched with a Belsoir espresso bean. And I have always found it to be too dark and more of a, it's more brown. It's espresso bean, but there are hints of like a golden green to it as well. And when I pulled it out of my drawer recently, I said to myself, yeah, that it's fine. You know, it does look good. It is a really dark green. I still don't like it on the plants with the leaves. So I am going to take out this plant, and I purchased a green Belsoir silk from Victorian Rose Needle Arts. I was at her shop like 3 or 4 months ago, and I purchased a green silk to replace this. So I will take this out and stitch green. And there are some other green plants, like this one in the center and at the bottom. And I will be using my green for that. But the rest of the border is going to be in the espresso bean. So that's going to be my project that you're going to see more stitching on for the next month. So those are my 2 projects. And yeah, so that's my plans. Now I'm going to show you my purchases. I told you that the Stitch Shop in Ocala had their grand opening because it is now called the Common Thread Cross Stitch. And right before it opened, they took over from Jean, who had the shop back when it was called Brick City Cross Stitch. And so back in June was her last day of having Brick City Cross Stitch. And so I wanted to buy one last pattern from Jean. And so I went down there on a Saturday to stitch with Linda, and I purchased Plum Street Samplers, There Is Liberty. And so with the sesquicentennial next year, I'm going to be using this pattern to celebrate. So There Is Liberty and the Robin Pickens design is my only purchases for the last month. So that's all I have. Look forward to seeing all of you in September. I look forward to seeing everybody's Sampler September projects. And thanks for joining me, and look forward to seeing you in September. Thanks. Bye.